competition one. It was a few years before I was injured. It was about a couple years. The prize was a trip to Cancun, and I really wanted, it was for 2 people, so that's what I wanted. And all you had to do is show up at this bar and show up in your bathing suit, and then it was a bikini calendar. And they had, I think, about 75 participants, and they chose 12, so, you know, 1 for each month. So I was able to do that. I was Miss April, and that's my month, actually. So, and from that, I met a photographer, and part of the prices was a portfolio, and that's kind of how I got into modeling. And he said I should have been the cover girl, and you know, all this nice stuff. He said, you know, you really have potential. I'm very short. I'm only 5'2". You know, like, you would be great for like swimsuit modeling or fitness, not, you know, runway or anything like that, obviously. So he's the one that was like, you know, can I send your pictures out, please? I see the potential. And I'm like, all right, fine, go ahead. We're not gonna get any calls for sure. So I think it was about a year. I mean, it took time, but about a year, Stuff magazine. It's kind of, I think it's part of Maxim's. It's a risque kind of magazine. They called us, and they actually wanted to fly me to New York, and I mean, I was just so surprised. I never thought it would happen. And they're calling me and saying, okay, what would be the closest airport so we can fly you out? I'm like, whoa, very overwhelmed. But I actually had the same day they wanted to fly me out, I already had a Europe trip planned that I had been saving for and working for really hard. It had been, you know, lifelong dream to go to Europe. So I was placed with, you know, this dilemma. Do I do this modeling shoot, or do I go to Europe? And I chose Europe because it was my lifelong dream, and I had worked so hard for it. And many people said, like, oh, you should have done the modeling, and then you would have traveled, you know, once you became this model. But that is so superficial. It's very competitive. I said no. I knew what I wanted, and I would be a lot more proud to be able to get there and know that I had worked so hard for that trip. Now, looking back, it was the best decision because 5 months after that, I was injured. Time to modeling, but I've done some pictures and some modeling. The first shoot I did, of course, I did not incorporate the chair. Subconsciously, I mean, I was not ready for it. We did a lot of stuff like laying down or in a couch and where you wouldn't see the chair. And somebody asked me if I'd taken pictures in the chair. I said no. Like, why not? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, it's part of you. It's like, oh my goodness, yes. And so the next shoot I did was with the wheelchair, and it came out really good. And I also did a wheelchair fashion show, which was really cool to be able to do that. I never did it runway, but now I got to do it in a wheelchair.
Abilities Expo?
Abilities Expo.
Okay.
Abilities Expo last year in Anaheim. Brace, because I was fused from C3 to T10. I had the brace that went from here to my pelvis. I couldn't really do much for 3 months, and I wasn't even sure how I would be able to do a transfer from, you know, therapists would tell me, yeah, you'll be able to be independent and go back to school and drive, but I couldn't even picture how I would get by myself from my bed to my chair. Like, it was just so much work. My mom had to help me, you know. It was where you count the 1, 2, 3, and they help you. So I didn't know, like, really, am I gonna be able to do this? Like, I was so unsure about it, and I kept hearing, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, and you just go like, yeah. But it really does get better. It takes time. Every little bit counts, and it's just staying positive is the number one thing, not victimizing oneself, because you end up hurting yourself even more, and just being happy, looking at what you have. The first time I went to the mall, I still had the crazy looking brace, of course, And I remember coming home so upset, and I told my mom, oh my gosh, everyone is looking at me. Of course I'm thinking because I'm in a wheelchair. And she said, like, my mom's being my rock, as you could probably already see. And she said, Tamara, just remember, they could be looking, for all you know, they could be looking at your smile, or they could be looking at your hair. I had long hair. You don't know. They're not looking at you just because you're in a wheelchair. And besides the fact, people looked at you before. It's not just because you're in a wheelchair now. I said, okay. Still wasn't very convincing, but I was like, alright, I'll take it for right now. People have told me, and I've experienced the same with people that are in wheelchairs. I forget that they're in wheelchairs as long as they forget about it. Not in a bad way, not neglecting. I've embraced the injury, my wheelchair. I like my wheelchair. I like how I look in it. And I've embraced it. I don't neglect it, I don't ignore it, but I do forget that I'm in a wheelchair, and I forget that I'm paralyzed, and that's happened to me. So whatever you project is what people are going to see. And if you're like sad and like, oh my gosh, that's what people are going to see. If you're happy, then, and that's what I see. It was about 2 years post. I was at a restaurant with a friend, just having a good time, and this lady was devastated. She had just been diagnosed with MS, and she was having a really hard time. And she came up to me. Why did she come up to me? Because I was in a wheelchair. And she asked me about it, and we talked, and she was just so thankful. And she said to me, I feel so much better. And that's when I went, see, I'm meant to be in a wheelchair. So when I go talk to patients, I'm very honest. I don't sugarcoat things. It's not easy to live in a wheelchair. I don't pretend like, oh, my life, you know, I've heard, oh, my life is just the same as it was. Well, I don't know what world they live in, but my life is not the same. I have to work much harder to get out of the house, but it doesn't mean, because it's changed, it doesn't mean it can't be better. It's not the same, and I try to be very honest about that. But I stopped caring about what guys or anybody thought if I was in a wheelchair, because I was proud of it. It meant I was still here and alive. So when I met Josh, that's the kind of attitude I had. So I think it helped. He didn't see the wheelchair either, so he's been a blessing in my life. Very supportive. Just goes with it. And you know, we got to travel, and when we travel, we're a team. Like that's how I view myself. And Josh, we're definitely a team when we're there for each other, and I do a lot for him too. If you were to ask me, would you like to walk? Of course, I would love to be able to walk, as long as it's something practical and that still leaves me with time to do the things that are rewarding for me. If it's going to end up being more painful, emotionally, mentally, and then I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm happy with how I am. My mom's been, a single mom. When I got injured, I didn't even want the psychologist. Nothing personal with whoever that was. But I would tell my mom, you're my psychologist. You come here. You reassure me that, because she had reassured me so many other times that I would be okay. So just her telling me you'll be okay. You'll do everything you want. And she's been amazing. She has given me so much freedom.